Hey folks, happy Thursday. Welcome back. Ahead is my second half of the interview with Ben Rabbidoux. He is the economist and founder of Edge Analytics. And if for some reason you missed the first half, go ahead and click on that link below. Hope you enjoy, folks. See you at the finish line. So, okay, let's segue into, because I think this could potentially be a long conversation. Actually, you know what? I'm going to open with, okay? You know what I'm going to open with is a yes/no question. Okay. Do you ever wake up in the morning and think, my God, are David Fleming and I just like Michael Burry was in 2008?
You're looking for a yes/no answer? That's never, that particular thought has never crossed my mind. I've been, as you know, like you and I have had the discussion for years,
Yeah.
bearish and way early. And now I find that I'm probably kind of like, well, I don't know how much worse it's going to get. I think there's going to be a bit of a downward grind in pricing from here, but you really need the wheels to come off in the economy to get it, I think, to really grind dramatically lower.
I mean, my reference was with the pre-construction.
Oh, that's a shit show. Oh yeah, man.
That's what I mean by me.
Oh yeah,
Me and you being Michael Burry.
Yes.
For the people that don't know, Michael Burry, of course, played by Christian Bale in The Big Short, was the person that saw the financial crisis of 2008 happening. Mortgage-backed securities, they're junk, they're going to fail. And he sounded the alarm, and everyone just kept buying and trading. Me and you, for 10 years, have been warning people about pre-construction, and
that part's a disaster. Yeah. And kudos to you, because I think we're the first person to articulate this whole concept of like this growing gap, this growing premium, I should say, between the new condo market and the resale market. You're the first person to flag that, and at the time, it was relatively modest. It was whatever 10%. And then it blew out to these crazy levels in kind of 20, 21, 22 to like 20, 30%.
Yeah.
And that's the vintage that's completing now and is just so dramatically offside. And people are just so screwed on those. It's brutal.
But one day they're going to make a movie, and I'm wondering who's going to play me and you. Like that's
yeah.
Because I forget who played the other. There was Michael. Anyways, I'm the weirdo, so it'll probably like the Christian Bale, Michael Burry character. But
it was Steve Carell that played Eisman.
So jokes aside, for those people that haven't been following us for that long, look, once upon a time, pre-construction prices were lower than resale, which made sense because you're taking on a risk, you're buying an unknown, you're waiting for something to be delivered, and that made sense. And then prices drew even, and that's when I said, why would anyone buy pre-construction? This is absolutely crazy. Then prices went up. You're paying more for something that could be canceled, could have major deficiencies, there could be material changes. The elevator directly into the subway that they promised, they just didn't do it. The rooftop pool, nope, they didn't do it. There's so many issues with it.
Or just prices go flat for a few years.
And that's
interim, right?
That's the crazy thing is that when we started to see a 10% premium for new construction, it made no sense. When the premium is 40%, and let's use some numbers here, Ben, you're paying $1,800 a foot in pre-construction. Resale next door is $1,200 a foot. I'm saying, why would anyone do that? And everyone's telling me, shut up. I'm getting blasted on every social media by every new condo agent, and I'm getting absolutely torn apart. And then it's like, forget if prices come down. If they just stay flat, you're screwed when this thing's finished. Now prices have come down. You paid $1,800 a foot. It was worth $1,200 on the resale market next door. Now it's $1,000. Me and you were calling this for years.
It's fucking nuts, man.
And here we are.
Dude, like the stupidity of that. So like you think, okay, what if you just go back to a normal market where you get 4 or 5% appreciation, which is a good market.
Right.
So if you got a 4 or 5 year construction timeline, you're getting 4% price appreciation. Like, so maybe you get 20%.
Yeah.
Your deposit's gone. Like you've just lost your deposit in a normal market. So like I don't know what people were thinking, but it's shocking to me how many people kind of drank that Kool-Aid. Everyone thought they'd be able to assign it, right? Yeah. And not have to close. And now we're finding that market is completely frozen.
Welcome back, guys. Sorry, we just had a technical glitch there. But Ben, let's continue this conversation about pre-con. So me and you were basically going on about how great we are, and we all saw this coming. I think the other conversation here, which we wrote about on the blog, I say I chatted with you and some other folks, the blanket mortgage appraisals that are coming through. And so in layman's terms, guys, you pay $700 for a pre-con and you get an approval at the time. Now that thing's worth $550 because the market's dropped and it was never worth $700. But guess what? RBC gave the whole building a blanket appraisal for $700. So Ben, to me, this is either the worst thing I've ever heard, which I liken. I'm going back to Michael Burry. S&Ps and Moody's continued to grade all of these mortgage-backed securities AAA because what? They were afraid that they would go somewhere else. if RBC is going to give blanket mortgage appraisals, they're going to basically circumvent the Bank Act. They're going to tell people this is worth 700 and it's worth 500, and then they're going to have a loan based on that, and they're going to screw their shareholders, the publicly traded company. This to me is yet another example of how the mortgage-backed security crisis in the United States will over time be likened to the pre-construction condo crisis here in Toronto.
Yeah, look, I think it's a terrible idea. I'm not a fan of these. I understand in principle what they're trying to get at through that, trying to provide stability for pre-construction buyers and all this. Man, I think they're really playing with fire. I think you touched on two really important points. The first is that we have a bank act in Canada that has served Canadians tremendously well through multiple crises, precisely because we insist on certain things like if a bank is going to make a residential mortgage loan and it's not insured,
Yeah.
It can't be more than 80% loan to value.
Yeah.
Right. And so consequently, when we get into times of kind of economic turmoil, our banks generally have done very well compared to global peers. You're kind of screwing with that. Like that, I don't think Canadians should be comfortable with that. The wording of the Bank Act is tremendously clear. You cannot make a loan that is not insured for more than 80% loan to value. Clearly, that's what these banks are doing. Now, they're then representing to their shareholders and regulators that this is not an 80% LTV loan, but that's bullshit. We know that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Where I think it becomes problematic, if we rewind, you remember remember the whole fiasco with Home Capital Group and the whole mortgage fraud thing. It ended up that they never really took losses on those loans. But what happened was people lost confidence in that particular company, in management. They no longer believed that they were being told the truth. And what I worry about with these Canadian banks, because they are priced relatively high globally compared to global peers, one of the reasons for that is they are viewed as being these extremely trustworthy institutions. But I worry that when they are making representations to their investors that their uninsured loan book is on average 60% loan to value or something like that, if it starts coming out that actually they've got these loans on their book that they're representing it being 80% loan to value, but in reality they're like 100, 110%.
Yeah.
I just don't know that that's going to sit well with investors. And investors can vote with their feet. And when you're dealing with a levered entity like a bank that's reliant on funding from investors, I just don't think you want to be playing with that game. It's not in the best interest of Canadians. Mm-hmm. And I just think that whole process. The other thing that's just striking to me is we have not gotten clarity from OSFI, the bank regulator, on their stance on this.
Yeah.
And every chance I get, I'm like CCing them on Twitter, like, hey guys, like, can we get your official take on this?
They're never going to.
And they're not saying anything. So you at least need to get the view of the banking regulator of like, well, how are you going to handle this? How are you going to provision against that? Like, what are we going to allow? Is this a temporary thing? We just need some clarity because this is a crazy act to see from a Canadian institution.
And is it just RBC that you know of? I know RBC's doing it.
No, there's a couple of them that are doing it. RBC's sort of the big one, but there's a couple of them that are doing it. They're the ones that are out there publicly. It's in their advertising material online. So it's like, it's very much out there, but they're not the only one that's doing it. There's a couple others.
Yeah, it frustrates me because, again, I'm going to go back to the government. I should put my tinfoil hat on here, but I feel like in Canada, like let's be honest, we are extremely socialist, and there's a role of government that's taken on a new meaning. And I feel that the solution to everything is for the government to bail people out. So I wrote on my blog the other day, when Trump tariffs were announced, Trudeau stood up and he said, "Don't worry, we will make everyone whole." Which again, I would say you can't. You're making it whole with tax dollars, which are supposed to pay for things like schools, which suck, and medical, which sucks, etc. But point being that if the idea here is we can't let these people lose money, so we have to circumvent the Bank Act to, quote, make them whole once again, then what are we really doing as a country? No one's allowed to make mistakes. No one's allowed to lose. No one's going to be responsible. And one of the quotes in one of the newspapers that I basically pulled 7 articles about Gregor Robertson's comments last week, and you get the Toronto Star saying, of course, we have to allow home prices to fall. One of the authors said something about how we need to make home prices fall, but we also need to protect any of the buyers that are affected. And I'm like, how can you do both? You're saying that home prices are going to fall, but you're going to make sure that there's a safety net. And then it would be what? Young people or disadvantaged people, financially you can't have it both ways.
No, I can tell you what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that this whole pre-construction condo issue is enough of an issue for the banking sector. And This whole, inability to close, like we're going to get a point. I think this summer we could see a big development where they have more than half of the buyers potentially
Oh,
not
Ben,
closed.
it's
And then you
already
can't,
happened. And this is
well, but this is the thing. So then how do you can't form a condo corporation?
no. So there is a development which shall remain nameless. I have this on authority from a builder told me about another builder. On the day that, registration and everyone's supposed to line up with their lawyers and close, 76% of buyers either refused or couldn't close. What happens there?
So, okay, that's fascinating. So this is what I've been waiting
I'll give
for,
you
because
offline. I'll give you
please,
yeah.
I want those juicy details. I love it how developers are always willing to like throw everyone else under the bus. Everyone's
Yeah.
like, well, they're having problems. We're
Yeah.
not seeing it, but I've heard these guys. And then you go talk to those guys and they're like, well, actually these people over here, it's kind of this funny game. Here's what I think is going to have to happen, because I do think this is a big enough of an issue. And again, David, I'm not saying this is what I think is the right approach, but if you put yourselves in the hats of the government, they're going to try to do something.
Free money.
So what will they likely do is, I think you will see an inventory loan management scheme, probably backstopped by CMHC, a zero interest inventory management loan, where the developers can take on this financing that allows them to repay their development lenders, so that banks don't have to take huge provisions on these massive development loans. And then that allows the developers to sort of trickle the release of those units into the market so as to not like crush the value of their own properties. And I don't know that there's any way around that. So, I think that's what's ultimately going to be the solution here. And I'm no fan of that, but we've seen this playbook before, and there's that saying, it's like, hey, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Like, that's what they're going to. They're going to do something like that, Dave.
Well, I was going to say that the benefit of this is that if we try really hard, we could probably create another 10,000 government jobs here. Like we could create a whole wing. I mean, I think the solution, the government's taken over, let's see, alcohol, cigarettes, cannabis. They should just take over real estate. They should just oversee all building, all sales, all purchases. They should just take over absolutely every aspect of our lives here. So, yeah, I figured that's going to be the solution, is the government needs to step in. But, in fairness, I don't actually have another suggestion other than to let it all implode. But
they're not going to do, David.
I know. Well, it's real estate's too big to fail. And that's why,
you're not wrong.
But among other reasons, for the last, here, 2004, I got into the business. Okay. So in 2004, people are calling for the collapse. And I've written about this on my blog so many times. '04, the collapse. '05, '06, right? We get Garth Turner. We get all these people, Hilliard Macbeth, the collapse. And all along I've been saying, it's too big to fail. The entire country would implode because CMHC is backstopping the banks, because of the equity that seniors have in their homes. It's a tax recap. Like, the system, you could say it's rigged. But I've been saying this all along. Like, I feel bad for the guy in '08, read Garth Turner's book, and he's like, yeah, I'm waiting for the 80% collapse, and now prices have tripled.
Well, okay, but I think you got to define what fail means, right? So when you say it's too big to fail, like what I would say is, we've now seen a price decline from peak of 18% nationally.
Yeah.
And that's almost 30% in real terms.
Yeah.
Man, that's a pretty big fucking drop. Now,
after a 20-year bull run, right?
Sure. But eventually, I don't know. It's not like we're not living through the midst of a historic downturn in prices off a peak already. Like we are. This is a worse downturn than we've seen in 2017 and during the financial crisis.
Absolutely.
It's actually a worse decline nationally than we saw in the early 90s.
Yeah.
That was primarily like a Toronto, Southern Ontario phenomenon. The rest of the country was mostly fine. And today we're seeing real pockets of issues around the country, but to be fair, mostly Ontario and BC. But this is a real drop, man. Like, I don't know what, too big to, I don't know what fail means, but a 20% drop off peak, a 30% decline in real terms is not nothing.
No, and I would say that, not to minimize what happened in the 90s, but like on relative terms as a percentage, sure, we're past that. But, if the average home price went from 190,000 to 160,000, yeah, it's a lot. But, now you're seeing people lose. I mean, look, I've had, somebody who didn't buy through me, they paid $1,480,000 for a house. And when I went and met them last year, I was like, guys, this is a 1.4 house. And they were aghast. And you factor in their land transfer fees and their real estate fees. These guys took a $150,000 loss. Now, mind you, they bought another property outside the city, which they got for a pittance. But we are seeing real losses here.
Sure.
And so you go back to the articles in the Toronto Star about, this sad sack guy that bought pre-construction thought he couldn't lose. And he's actually got quotes that say, I didn't think anyone could lose money in Toronto real estate.
I know, it's crazy.
That was your first mistake. And then you get people saying things like, well, I assumed I could have signed the agreement of purchase and sale. And that's a whole other topic. So
did you hear, Dave, man, I don't want to throw this guy under the bus too badly, but fuck it. He put himself out there.
Let's do it.
So there's this Toronto Star article about this guy whose deposit is tied up in this failed condo development. And he's kind of like, hey man, I want my deposit back. And what's hilarious is this guy, two things. First off, doesn't realize that had that development gone ahead, he would have lost his deposit and then some, because that dude bought at peak. So he's kind of like crying about, hey, my deposit's tied up. I'm like, dude, you dodged a bullet here. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, this dude works as a financial planner for a bank.
Yeah. And he went on record. He went on record.
He's out there like talking about this. I'm like, dude, you're advising people how to make smart financial decisions, and you're out there like specking into pre-con at peak. Like, this is crazy, man. Canada's a crazy place.
But you know what the answer is? You know what the answer is? The government should bail him out. So had that project gone ahead, because listen, cynically, I believe that everyone in Canada thinks that if they get into trouble, the government's there to save them financially.
Yes.
When I was on CTV Your Morning the other day, I was talking about pre-construction and all these people now that are saying like, this isn't fair. I said, look, you were gambling. If you went in the casino, you put all your money on the roulette wheel and your number didn't come up, you wouldn't turn to the pit boss and say, actually, can I have that back? But everyone that bought pre-con, they're now saying it's not fair. I can't assign it. Prices are down. I want my deposit back. And then to your point, if the project doesn't go ahead, all you lose is your deposit. If the project goes ahead and they expect you to close, they're going to sue you for the losses, which is what we saw. Who's the developer? I can't recall. It starts with a C. They're suing all of the buyers, right? And
which they have the legal right to. They're well within their rights to do that.
All right. Well, listen, I said I'd get you out of here. I know you got some work around the property. Just working on homes, man. I went home last night and I mowed my lawn at 8 o'clock. I look forward to it all day. Just crushing the front lawn right now, man. It's
a good way to just kind of unplug, right?
Yeah. All right. Listen, I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you so much. We're going to put this podcast out, put it up on the blog as well. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks, buddy.
Sounds good, buddy.
Okay.
Thanks,
take care. Bye-bye. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed the preceding hour of me and Ben Rabidoux. Of course, we had part 1 on Monday in case you missed it. But who doesn't like to sit down and talk about all things real estate, interest rates, economy, tariffs, Bank of Canada, housing supply, housing demand? What a nerd. Oh my God, how did I turn into this person? I swear I thought I'd be so much cooler by the time I got to this point in life. No, seriously though, folks, if you did enjoy this type of content, reminder that we do have the Last Honest Realtor podcast. Yes, I actually put this out on the podcast as well, but I encourage you to go take a look. We'll put a handy link below. If you happen to be mowing the lawn or something like that, have a listen. Or if you happen to have one of those jobs where you don't have to do anything, yes, watch a 45-minute of me talking about real estate. Have a fantastic weekend, folks. Take care.